Hey everybody, welcome back to Two Spot Monkeys. The theme music has returned. Happy to have everybody joining us for this episode. This is episode number 4, 4.1 or 4A, something like that. You'll understand why later on, but happy to have you guys here. We're gonna recap AEW Double or Nothing, and then we have a special event planned for this episode and the second half of this episode. So last Saturday was AEW Double or Nothing, and gonna quickly run down the results from that. And then Jim, I know you were the only one of us who had the chance to watch that event live. So you have some tangible takeaways, different than me just reading results. So I'd love to hear what you have to think about the show. So looking at my cheat sheet here, because I can't remember it from memory. AEW Double or Nothing, May 23rd, 2020. Started off with the buy-in, had a number one contenders tag match. Best Friends defeated Private Party. So Best Friends of Chuck Taylor and Trent are the number one contenders for the AEW tag team titles. Will they challenge Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page, or will it be another team that they eventually challenge? The casino ladder match was next, and it saw our mystery entrant, who ended up being Brian Cage, with Taz, which was interesting in my opinion, win that match and secure a future AEW title shot. The next match was MJF over Jungle Boy. The TNT title came next, and to my chagrin, Cody beat Lance Archer. After that, we had one of our first changes in the night, and actually, second change. I didn't mention the other one because it was in the ladder match. But Chris Statlander beat Penelope Ford because Britt Baker did get injured a week ago Wednesday, so that took her out of that match. Dustin Rhodes beat Shawn Spears. AEW Women's World Title, Hikaru Shida defeated Nyla Rose in a no DQ, no countout match. So that was a title change there. The AEW World Title was next. Champion Jon Moxley, who was 11-0 in 2020 going to that match against Mr. Brody Lee, who had stolen the AEW title and was 5-0 in 2020 going to that match. Jon Moxley picked up the win, and so Jon Moxley remains undefeated, and Mr. Brody Lee takes his first loss. And then we closed out the show with the Stadium Stampede match, which saw the elite of Kenny Omega, Hangman Adam Page, the Young Bucks, and Matt Hardy, all versions of him, to defeat the inner circle of Chris Jericho, Sammy Guevara, Jake Hager, Santana, and Ortiz. And I'm really eager to hear your thoughts on that match, Jim. So that was the rundown from the results from Saturday. Lay it on us, Jim. What were your thoughts?
It was a really fun show. I just want to start off and say that. It was a really fun show. They had, wrestlers and crew and that in the crowd, per se, which really does help. I had read something earlier today that maybe on Raw they were going to start using some NXT talents in the audience tonight as well. We're recording this during Raw. I don't think either of us have seen a minute of Raw as of this moment, so I don't know for sure that that's happened. It adds so much more than just an empty sound in the arena when you've even got just a few people. Big Swole was in every heel's face, I felt like, all night. She did a really great job helping out with that. So it really does add a lot to it. Without going through every single match, or maybe I'll just touch on them really quick. The buy-in was a good tag match. It went the way you and I thought it would. We'll see where that leads for Best Friends. I think we both think there's a very good chance they could end up winning the titles eventually here. Cage winning the ladder match, I had not even thought about Brian Cage. I knew back in January that there was rumors he had signed with AEW, but he had blown his knee out, I think it was, or something. Had an injury anyways of some kind. And his wife, Melissa Santos, said, no, he hadn't signed with anybody. Why do we believe anything wrestlers say on social media anymore? Of course she's going to say that because you want the surprise when he does show up. So I thought it was a really good surprise. Definitely not on either of our radars. Somebody I thought of afterwards was Chris Hero, and was kind of hopeful maybe that he would show up. But Cage came out and actually he had a small ladder in his hands and he tore it in half as he walked through the tunnel, which was kind of funny and kind of, the dude's freaky strong, let's be honest. I think the pairing with Taz is going to be interesting. I've never noticed, as much as I've seen Cage, I've never seen him as much of a talker. He's not terrible. He's not like Sid Vicious on the mic or anything, but having Taz with him, I mean, somebody who's all about pain and, tap out and all that sort of thing. With Cage is not really a tap out guy. He's just going to blow through you and kill you. He had one spot in the match, Tom. You should probably seek it out if you can. He put Darby Allin on a ladder and then pressed the ladder over his head and threw it out of the ring. Darby Allin might still be alive. I'm not sure. He tried to end it himself, I think, earlier in the night when he jumped off with his skateboard off top of the ladder. But anyways, Darby Allin trying to do something stupid on a ladder match, right? Who would have thought it? But so I think that was really cool. And they have announced on social media anyways, that Cage will get his title shot at Fyter Fest, which they are going to give more information about this week on Dynamite. So they did announce the next pay-per-view is All Out Labor Day weekend. They did not announce a venue for it because I think September is a long way away. And, it may very well still be Daly's Place. Who knows? But they did say they are going to do a Fyter Fest. So sometime this summer, I don't know if it's going to be free on BR Live like it was again. Speaking of which, let's pause right here for a minute. You and I mentioned this before we hit record. BR Live, I don't mean to call them out on a show that they'll never see, but I bought the show Wednesday, Thursday, and went to tune in at 6:30 my time for the buy-in, and all I got was the White Circle of Death. They apparently were having a lot of problems with their Roku app before that. I was able to catch most of the match on YouTube because they were also streaming it there, so I was able to flip over to YouTube and catch most of it. But I explained to them that for me, if I'm going to pay $50 to watch a wrestling show, I don't want to watch it on my laptop. That's why I have a Roku. And I was not happy at that moment. I will say, just as the main show went on the air, it started working. I got to see all of the main show on my Roku just fine. And from that point on, it streamed great. But I was a little disgruntled for that half an hour during the buy-in when I was starting to think that I wasn't going to get what I was paid for, and I was going to get told, well, you'll be able to watch it on demand. And it's like, well, no, I have the time right now to watch this show. There's no guarantee tomorrow I will have this time to sit and watch this show. Tom, you mentioned you had a problem with BR Live. Is that something you want to go into, or?
Yeah, just briefly, sure. Yeah. So again, first and foremost, pay-per-views are destination viewing, right? So in this day and age with social media, like unless you're going to literally put yourself in a dark room and not have access to your phone or your computer, the reason why you're watching something live is to see it live. I digress there. If I was teetering back and forth all day. And from weeks ago, back in other episodes, other shows we talked about, I really wanted to get to this show. I really wanted to watch it. I decided that BR Live was going to be my path to do so. I was going to end up watching it on my laptop because while I have a Roku, I've not downloaded that app yet. So I'm grateful for your information because that opens up a new window for me. And I would have saved, again, $10 versus ordering it through my cable provider.
$60 on cable. That's just nuts.
Yeah. So, middle of the day, late morning, early afternoon, I tried to reset my password. Unsuccessful. Sent a customer service email, and they don't get to them until 4 p.m. Eastern. So I was like, okay, no big deal. I didn't get a response until 9 o'clock that night. So my opportunity to do what I wanted to do didn't even come to fruition in the end. So, and again, I don't know what type of backlog they might have had on customer service emails, or if there were other issues. Clearly, maybe what they were dealing with that impacted you was something of greater magnitude. So yes, if I'm not going to get an email response until I think it was 9:09 exactly, that obviously made my plans for the night, and I kept tuned online to what was going on. So again, I'm glad that you're able to watch the show. I'm glad that it kicked on right as you started. But disappointing up to that for you, and disappointing for me because, not that AEW is going to be made or broken by my pay-per-view buy, but I'm sure they would have appreciated another one.
Right. Every whatever cut they get of that $50, every bit helps. And I haven't heard any buy rate numbers, and of course it's always just reported by them, so they're going to put the best spin they ever can on it, because what company wouldn't? That's not a dig at AEW in any way. But everyone helps, especially in a time frame where I would think it might have been a little lower than their previous ones have been, just because of the economic situation in the country and people having to make that decision. And like we talked about, $50 is tough when WWE Network is $10 a month and you get everything, including WrestleMania, for that price. So let's see. The MJF and Jungle Boy had a great wrestling match. They were awesome. Those two are both huge stars in the making. Not a lot more to say about it, but really, really good match. Probably, well, not probably, pure wrestling wise, easily the best thing on the card. Easily the best thing on the card. The TNT title match was good. As much as I predicted Cody to win it, the follow-up will be important, I think, here with Lance Archer to make sure that they don't bury him. Tyson looked completely disinterested most of the match. They caught him yawning on camera at least once, which was great. It was just, he looked kind of disinterested, and then he got a little involved at the end, not really much. He's going to be there again on Wednesday. I don't know. For what he did, I sure hope they didn't pay him a lot, but I'm guessing he doesn't come cheap. So the belt looked terrible, but apparently it's not finished yet because of the COVID-19 stuff. And the company that was making it is now making, I believe, ventilator parts for people. So obviously way more important than making a wrestling belt. Personally, while I understand they want a belt to give him, I think I would have just said, hey, the belt isn't ready yet because of this, and the company's making, you can have a PR spin on it with the company's making parts for ventilators for people who need them. So there will be a title belt presentation in the future, in a few weeks when it's ready, instead of bringing one out that, as our friend Blake said, looked like recycled Coke cans. It was bad. It was not good. Maybe it'll look better in the end. Statlander and Ford was kind of a paint by numbers women's match. Once the storyline went out of it with Baker getting hurt, it was what it was, and it was fine. Both that and Dustin and Sean Spears were kind of nice come downs though after the TNT match. Had been a kind of a war, and then you were going into your last three matches. Sheeta winning was awesome. They had a really good brawl, actually. Rose held her own too. They did really well, and Sheeta winning. They played up a little bit that she was emotional because of the death earlier that day or overnight the night before of Hana Kimura from the Stardom promotion, and obviously our thoughts go out to her family as well as Shad Gaspard's. Not a good week in wrestling as far as things like that go, and I don't know how close they were or weren't. But they played it up a little bit at the end, but not too much, not to the point where it felt like it was exploitation of it or anything like that. Moxley winning was a war, and they've got an out because Brody Lee did not get pinned and he didn't submit. So he passed out / ref stoppage. And I've seen that Brody Lee has tweeted respect to Jon Moxley, and that's all I have to say for now. So I'm sure that'll be followed up on Wednesday. Again, I think follow-up is going to be important there because here's his first big match, and he loses, much like Lance Archer. I've seen some other people say, they put Nyla Rose in that as well, that all three monsters, got beat. The Rose one I see very different because she's been around since day one. She can take a loss and she'll be fine. The other two I think still can take a loss and be fine, but it was their first big match. It's not Nyla Rose's first big match. She'll be fine. And as you and I both said, I think it was time to get the belt off of Nyla Rose. Sheeta has been nothing short of fantastic, and I think is what they need in a women's champion right now to make that division what they want it to be. They've claimed it's going to be the best women's division ever, and it hasn't lived up to that, frankly, until now. So having Sheeta as your champion, I think, will be much better than either Rio or Rose. But it's all about challengers now, too. So be interesting to see where that goes. And then, okay, all right, let's talk about this, the main event. I actually, for the most part, really liked this match. We've talked about cinematic matches, and this was kind of that. It was kind of cinematic, kind of empty arena, kind of Falls Count Anywhere, a little bit of a hybrid of all of that. Had some goofiness in it. Adam Page wasn't there at the beginning, and then came riding in on a horse and chased Sammy Guevara on a horse, which was, tongue-in-cheek fun. It was what it was. Guevara plays a good kind of comedy scaredy cat heel, I guess, for lack of a better word, who talks tough, but then isn't. They had a really funny spot later in the match where he was knocked out, and the sprinkler came up right underneath him and woke him up, and he thought he'd won the match because he was the only one left around. It worked really well. So the one thing, though, that irked me, and I've seen people go both ways on this. I've seen people who said it isn't a big deal, and I've seen people who felt the same way I did. Earlier that week, Shad Gaspard died. I believe that was Monday. Sunday or Monday, he had been in the ocean with his son. There had been a riptide. His son was able to be saved because when the lifeguards apparently got to him, at least the story is being told that Shad said, "Here, save my son first," which I don't happen to be a father. You are a father, Tom. I'm guessing that's exactly what a father is going to do. You're going to think of your kids first and foremost. Unfortunately, in that situation, Shad didn't make it out, and Shad passed away and drowned. They did a spot in the Stadium Stampede match. There's a pool in Jacksonville Stadium. Why is there a pool? I don't know. You're in Jacksonville, Florida, so they put a pool in the stadium. And they did a spot where Santana and Ortiz had Hardy in the pool, and they kept holding him under the pool to drown him. And every time he'd come up, and they did play it, they showed an underwater cam view where he was like giving thumbs up and goofy faces and whatever. And then he would come up and he would be a new version. So he was version 1.0. He was Big Money Matt. And then eventually came back to being Damascus or whatever in the world this broken version is. I get it. The gag of going through the gimmicks I thought was funny. I just didn't know if they needed to do a drowning spot the week that somebody in the wrestling world died drowning. Like I said, some people have said I'm overthinking that. Some people have said, oh, it's wrestling, it's whatever. I don't know. Had that not happened with Shad earlier in the week, I probably wouldn't have thought anything of it. And maybe they don't need to do an attempted murder spot anyways. I don't know. Maybe that's a thing. But I probably wouldn't have thought anything of it. But as I was watching, I thought, yeah, I'm a little uncomfortable with this. In the end, does it make me hate the show or say I'll never watch AEW? No, of course not. I just don't know if it was needed. I don't know. You probably read about it, Tom. You may have seen my comment on our friends, the Greg H board, about it. Any thoughts as I've explained that now?
No, it makes perfect sense. And again, whether they thought through that in developing that part of the match or not, you can't help but not have to acknowledge that they might have fallen short in doing that in retrospect with what had happened earlier in the week. I mean, it's totally different circumstances. I understand that, but nonetheless.
Right. And that was my thing. I understand when they probably wrote the ideas for the match and came up with that idea. That's probably well before anything had happened with Shad. And somebody said, well, it was taped beforehand. No, it was taped Friday night. So yes, it was taped before the pay-per-view. It was not taped before Shad. And they talked about Shad Gaspard on the show as well. Private Party hit the G9 at one point as an honor to him. So they mentioned it. So it's not like they weren't talking about it a little bit. I don't know. Just my 2 cents. People can agree or disagree with it. Like I said, did it make me hate the match? Did it make me hate Matt Hardy? Did it make me hate AEW? No. I can also chalk it up to somebody probably should have caught it, but somebody probably just didn't. I don't think anybody went, oh, that's fine. Shad drowned. Let's do a drowning spot. I don't think that happened. But, it was a really fun show. I've enjoyed AEW for the most part for the last year since they started. Crazy to think they've been around for a year now. It feels like October was really the start, but it was Double or Nothing last year, and Memorial Day weekend. So I've really enjoyed AEW. I'm curious to see where they go. Now, of course, with other people being available, do they bring in, the former Revival? Do they bring in Chris Hero? Do they bring in, I've seen Zack Ryder and Cody are friends. God, why? Don't do it. You already got, lower card WWE guys you're not doing anything with. See Sean Spears. Don't bring in Zack Ryder. You're not going to do anything with him either. That's just my opinion. It'll be interesting to see where AEW goes here in the next year.
Yeah, the big rhetorical questions that I want to just pose in response to kind of what you shared, and then just my takeaways too. And again, I know we'll talk about AEW down the road, so maybe these will develop, and then when we circle back, we can use this as like kind of the check-in on that. Where do the Elite go?
Mm-hmm.
Where do the Inner Circle go? Where does the Dark Order go? sidebar, where does Mr. Brody Lee go? I'm glad to know there's an opening for a potential rematch. Again, when we threw out possibly Drew Gulak being the mystery guy and winning, that we could see both of the matches, depending on how the outcome of the match happened, with him being solid. I think you can say the same for Brian Cage. Again, now it is Jon Moxley, but again, it doesn't mean that Cage cashes in or however that casino chip works. And I think that's it for now. Again, disappointed to think that perhaps Britt Baker was on track to win and be Sheeta's first challenger, because I think they had a little bit of history, and now who knows how long her injury will be. And then we didn't talk about it, but Ray Phoenix not obviously being in the ladder match and Janela replacing him. Glad to know the quality was not hampered, and it shouldn't have been. But when you're talking about the crazy spots, you didn't mention Janela, and I was quite surprised. So,
and he had his fair share too. He came in like a ball of fire when it was his turn. It was interesting in that ladder match was done kind of Royal Rumble style. They started with 2, and then every 2 minutes thereafter. And they had one thing I liked, and this was, they took away the Rumble clock. The Rumble clock is, we always get the 10-second countdown during the Royal Rumble, but if you ever actually sit and time it out, the timings are fudged a little bit. It's not every 90 seconds or every 2 minutes. Maybe it starts that way, but then as they run long or short, they might extend or shorten it. They actually had a 2-minute clock in the back of the rampway that you could see. It was a huge clock. You could see the entire time. So they weren't fudging the numbers on the 2 minutes, which was kind of fun. And if you're doing that match first, you don't have to. You can always fudge your time later in the show. Baker, I've read 6 to 8 weeks. With the break in her leg and the damage to ligaments. I think she's lucky it wasn't an actual full ACL tear, because that'd put her out about a year. And Phoenix could have gone, they said, but they held him back just to make sure it didn't get any worse. So, which is probably smart, because as we talked about on our last show, that was a nasty bump to the floor that he took. So, and it was apparently his ankle and his back, which the ankle had to be something else, because his back took all 100% of that fall, unless he caught his ankle on somebody on the way down, was the only part of his body that somebody touched. And somehow hurt him in the process. Don't catch him and wrench his ankle too. So, I think it was a great show, and be fun to see where they go come Wednesday night again.
Cool.
And I do agree with you. I kind of hope now they keep the Elite and the Inner Circle apart for a little while. Have them each go off and do their own things. You can always come back to that. It's kind of like the Four Horsemen and Dusty and Friends back in the day. You can always come back to it. But basically the better part of the first, since October for sure, since that's when the Inner Circle formed, has been based around the Inner Circle and the Elite. So I think it'd be good. Let them move on now and do other things and help build the rest of the roster up too. So, all right. Well, does that mean it's time to move into part 2?
It does.
Of our show here. So part 2 of our show is actually part 1 of something. So this episode, we're going to start a 2-part episode, if that makes sense. But we are going to do a fantasy draft. So as I mentioned in the last show, Tom and I are both fantasy nuts. I've been doing fantasy football mock drafts. By the way, somebody took N'Keal Harry in the first round in one of my mock drafts. That's why I hate mock drafts. Because sometimes you can't actually work a strategy because somebody does something stupid like that or takes, a kicker in the second round. But what we are doing for this fantasy draft is we're pretending that after COVID-19 is over, for whatever reason, sadly, all of the wrestling companies have gone under. And in their place, what has happened is USA and TNT have come to Tom and I, because after all, if you've been talking with Cody and you've been talking with Vince McMahon, and now you don't have them anymore, clearly Tom and I would be the next 2 people that USA and TNT would come to, right? I mean, who else?
Best choices out there, really.
What's that?
Best choices out there, best.
Absolutely. So they have asked us in this world that we are creating to create a fantasy draft or do a draft to draft our rosters for our new companies. We got very creative in our naming of these companies. Mine will be the Fields Wrestling Federation, and Tom's is Bobo Championship Wrestling, BCW and FWF. We'll probably change those names, once we are running our companies, down the road. But for tonight and the next time, that's the company names we're going to go with. As we get going in the draft, though, a couple of rules, sort of, for lack of a better word, that we want to share. All wrestlers are available, no matter what their current real-world contractual situation is. Tag teams can be taken together or separately. So you can take one member of a team, or you can take the whole team as one pick. Stables are not considered one pick, but if there's a tag team within that stable, for instance, we talked about the Inner Circle. Santana and Ortiz could be taken as a pick, but we couldn't take the entire Inner Circle as a pick. And injuries and other things are somewhat ignored, i.e. people like Becky Lynch, Roman Reigns, Britt Baker, folks who are out right now are somewhat ignored. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this into a two-part draft, because our fear is that if we start this draft and go all the way through, we're going to do 30 rounds of this draft. And we figured if we do 30 rounds in one episode, some of you have been very nice and have watched all of our episodes, but we don't want to, make you watch a 6-hour marathon. We don't do that long. The NFL will make you do that. We're not going to do that. We're just nicer than that. So what we're going to do is we're going to do 15 rounds tonight, back and forth. And then we're going to end this episode. And then we'll have another episode later in the week that will do the second 15 rounds, and also maybe do a little wrap up and talk about vision. How happy are we with our rosters? Was there anything we think we missed? Of course, we'll probably talk about that along the way as we snipe picks from one another, which I'm sure is bound to happen. Wouldn't be a fantasy draft if that didn't happen, right? But before we went on air tonight, we had a coin toss. After all, since we have no previous records, the worst team can't go first. So we did a coin toss, and Tom won the coin toss. We're not doing this in snake style. So it's just going to go back and forth, pick for pick. Otherwise, with only two of us, snake style would just be 2 picks each at a time. We might as well do one and draw out the drama of this a little bit more. There are no real rules as far as what your draft strategy has to be, whether we're after money, ratings, that's kind of up to Tom and I to decide as we make our picks. So with all of that said, Tom, you are on the clock, my friend, for the first pick in the Two Spot Monkeys fantasy draft.
Awesome. And as excited as I was to win the coin flip and get the first pick, it's also a lot of pressure because you don't want to mess it up. I hope I didn't do that with this pick. So with the first pick for Bobo Championship Wrestling, I select Kazuchika Okada. And with Okada, I mean, he's the man, and he's someone that I think I can build behind. I think any promotion can build behind. You talk about visibility, global visibility, global awareness, and in-ring. I want to have a high in-ring product, so no one better for me than Okada.
Well, we start with the sniping already. You got my guy. I got to admit, Okada was high on my list. I had thought about him at number one. Had I won the coin toss. Had you not taken him, I don't know for sure I would have taken him number 2 overall, because I did have my eye somewhere else as well. Had I not taken him, though, I was going to be really hopeful that you left him for me in round 2. But alas, one pick in, that didn't happen. So for Fields Wrestling Federation, I also want to make sure that the in-ring product, it's a wrestling company, and wrestling is what Tom and I both love. So it doesn't surprise me to hear you say that for Bobo Championship Wrestling as well. So I went for who I think probably right now, Okada's right there. And there's a couple other people who are right there, but I think right now this person might be the best wrestler on the planet Earth. With pick number 2 in the fantasy draft, I am very happy for my first pick to make Will Ospreay the number 1 pick for Fields Wrestling Federation. Ospreay moving from the junior to the heavyweight division, I think is going to be awesome. I think it's going to be a lot of really fun matches when New Japan comes back with shows. They recently said in a video that their president put out that when the state of emergency is lifted, they'll start looking at empty arena shows. I believe I heard that state of emergency may have been lifted today in Japan.
June 19th, I think, is like the comeback date.
Okay. For the state of emergency or for New Japan?
I think for potentially empty arena.
Okay. I had not seen that part yet. So that's awesome. Back into the real world of wrestling there for a minute. That's awesome. And I would definitely look forward to that because I think New Japan's going to come back guns a-blazing. But Will Ospreay, my number one pick, he is not, if I have a cruiserweight division or a junior heavyweight division or whatever you want to say, and as we go through picks, we'll see how that does or doesn't develop. Frankly, he's not going to be in that. He's going to be in my main event scene because you don't take somebody number one to not be in the main event. So Will Ospreay, my first pick.
Nice. Oh man, that's a great pick. You stunned me there. So if we both sniped guys that were high on our list, which again, it makes sense. Those are our number one picks. So with pick number 2, BCW will select Seth Rollins. And Seth Rollins, I think, is a guy that has it all. I think that he's got a lot of mileage left, and I think that he's a guy that's very versatile. Juxtapose him with Okada, I think you've got tremendous potential matches if you were to go that route. Not saying I will or won't or tip in my hat anyway. Okada, though, I see very much strongly as a very visible standalone babyface. With Rollins, I think you have the ability to pivot. You can have a babyface, but you can also be a tremendous heel. So Rollins, that's why he's number 2 on my board.
That's a great pick. As I was talking about Okada and Ospreay, Rollins certainly was in my head for the first pick. He could have been number 1 overall very, very easily. Probably one of the best in-ring in the world. Good pick there on Rollins. For me, characters are going to be important as well. I want an in-ring product, but I also want to tell stories. So talking will be important at times. Will Ospreay, he's okay on the mic, but his talent in the ring is going to way override that. So I'm not too worried about it. But I went for one of the best talkers. There's a lot of great talkers out there. But I want somebody who can not only talk, but they can also deliver when it comes to the ring. So the 4th pick of the draft, my second pick for Fields Wrestling Federation, I'm very happy. Adam Cole, baby, is coming to the Fields Wrestling Federation. I think Adam Cole is somebody, I know he's really short compared to a lot of the guys on the main card or on the Raw and SmackDown rosters. But I think Adam Cole, because of the way he can talk and the fact that he delivers in the ring, I'm going to throw a name out there, and I know people probably recoil when I say it, but Adam Cole has that Ric Flair to me. He can talk him into the seats, and then he can deliver when it comes in the ring. I don't remember the last really bad Adam Cole match I saw, and that goes back to when Adam Cole was TV champion in Ring of Honor, and I was sure he'd been signed because Matt Taven beat him for the title, and he was in the company for another 3 years or something like that. So Adam Cole, baby, coming to Fields Wrestling.
Awesome. Well, with the 3rd pick on my list, a guy that I've been very high on for a long time, would love to have him in my fold. That is Johnny Gargano. And I think, again, building on, high quality in-ring, I think he's a personality. Maybe we haven't seen it as much with the role he's had, but I think he's a versatile guy and makes a lot of sense for me here at number 3.
Well, I'm going to bounce off that. It's not a reactionary pick necessarily. But again, I talked about, character is important and being able to talk is important. And somebody who I think can, again, talk people in. And if Adam Cole isn't my top heel, this guy could be, or he could also be a babyface, much like you were saying with Seth Rollins. Versatility, I think, is really important in that. And I think we've both been building that a little bit. You certainly got it with Seth Rollins. You got it with Johnny Gargano even. As we're seeing the heel side to Johnny right now in NXT. But pick number 6 for me, I'm going to ensure that you cannot recreate one of the feuds that has never ended. And pick number 6 is going to be Tommaso Ciampa. Ciampa, to me, Ciampa doesn't want to go to the main roster currently in WWE, and that's okay. And I know we keep talking about current day while we're also talking about this weird other world where we're drafting, but it's the context we have. He doesn't want to go into the main roster, and I respect him for that. I think Ciampa could main event WrestleMania if he was on the main roster and given the opportunity. I think he's that good, both in the ring and on the mic. So for the 6th pick overall, my 3rd guy, I am thrilled to get Tommaso Ciampa.
We're drawing those lines right down the middle, I see. Okay, well, Bowl Championship Wrestling, pick number 4, number 7 overall. I'm gonna grab the first tag team while I can, and I'm gonna grab Nick and Matt Jackson, the Young Bucks. Easy pick for me in my mind. Thinking about people who know how to brand themselves and have used every, if not every, nearly every tool available to make money, make themselves bigger day by day, minute by minute, perhaps. I want that in my organization. I want that in my group, and I want to be able to be recognizable, merchandise, visibility on social media. Uh, they'll do it for themselves, but I'm sure they'll be willing to do it for others too. So, and then again, I'm not even talking about them in the ring, but they're fantastic. So, the Young Bucks.
There was a little part of me, Tom, that actually had considered in this draft seeing if I could just build the greatest tag team division ever and taking like the first 6 picks, all tag teams. Maybe in a mock draft, I would do that just to see how it would work out, because I might be afraid of who my heavyweight champion would be then, afterwards when I'm letting you take all of the top guys. But like you, and this really isn't reactionary because I was looking at them very highly. I was looking at the Bucks highly as well. So if you, maybe it is a little reactionary. If you're going to take the Bucks, I'm going to get the other half of what I think is the 2 best tag teams on the planet today. Fields Wrestling is bringing in the Lucha Brothers, Pentagon and Rey Fenix, or Pentagon and Phoenix. I can't ever keep it straight when they're called what, where. But I kind of feel like I'm getting a 2-for-1 here because I'm able to draft them as a tag team, and I do think they're one of the best tag teams in the world. But I also think both Phoenix and Pentagon have a lot of ability to be top level, upper card, and even main event talents as singles stars as well. So building that top, they used to talk about the SmackDown 6 when you had Kurt Angle and Jericho and He Who Shall Not Be Named, and I can't remember now, Batista, I think, was in there as well, where they could kind of mix and match those SmackDown 6. I kind of want to make sure I have that. And I feel like not only on the tag team side, but the single side, these guys give me a whole lot of flexibility. So the Lucha Brothers, to me, I am thrilled to get them as the cornerstone of my tag division, and know that when I need to, maybe once I build all the rest of my tag teams up, I can also break them off, maybe not even with a breakup, but break them off into single stars as well. Lucha Brothers. And as far as you mentioned merchandising, they may not be the merchandisers that the Young Bucks are, but Pentagon and Rey Fenix, I mean, they're made to be action figures. They're made to be on posters and T-shirts. So I'm looking forward to it.
Don't forget about your video game deal too.
Yes, maybe, yeah. Which will be way better than WWE 2K20.
Awesome. Well, pick 5 is interesting for me because Will Ospreay was also, as I shared a minute ago, really high on my list, and I recognize he's transitioning to that heavyweight mold, but in my mind, I had him as the cornerstone of a really high caliber junior division, and having him go to you and to your group challenged me. So I still want a visible junior division. I love high flying. I love quick wrestling. I love the flash that brings. So I don't know how this will come together as the draft unfolds, but I'm gonna go with Dragon Ryu Lee with my pick here, number 5 for me, number 9 overall. I love this dude. I think he's just amazing. Again, I think that it's that international flavor, and he's a beast in the ring. So if I do go the direction of having a junior heavyweight division, this guy can be a cornerstone for a long time.
You aren't kidding. He certainly can be one of the top light heavyweights, juniors, whatever you want to call them, cruiserweights, easily in the world. So nice pick there, Tom. Nice cornerstone for that division for you. So pick number 10, rounding out my top 5 picks. I recognize that in my first 4 picks, I have some really strong characters and I have some really strong wrestlers. But as far as mainstream notoriety, I'm probably lacking just a little bit on that. So I want to get a mainstream name, but somebody who I think can go in the ring. And again, we go back to that, somebody who can talk them into the building. You can tell I love promos. Roddy Piper was always a favorite of mine. It's hysterical that Ricky Steamboat is my favorite wrestler of all time when you think about that, because he's not exactly known for his promos. But I digress. That could be a whole different episode where we talk about our favorites of all time. But Ricky Steamboat was mine. But I always loved Roddy Piper, and I think the guy who most emulates Roddy Piper right now is going to be my fifth pick, the 10th overall pick in this draft, and that is the current AEW World Heavyweight Champion, Jon Moxley. And he would be Jon Moxley, not Dean Ambrose. If we say that we can use WWE names in our new promotions because they don't exist anymore, he would be Jon Moxley because that's who he is. I think that his violent tendencies are really fun to watch. His promos are engaging. They always make me listen. I kind of really tune in when he's talking because it's usually entertaining and usually helps move the story along, which is great. Sometimes in promos, it's just kind of random conversation or scripted words that mean nothing, or suffer and succotash like was scripted for some people in WWE. So hopefully that won't be happening in Fields Wrestling Federation. But Jon Moxley is my fifth pick. Before we go to your next pick, Tom, let's just quickly recap. After every 5 picks, we'll quick throw up a recap of the rounds. So here is rounds 1 through 5 for us. Tom has Okada, Rollins, Gargano, the Bucks, and Dragon Lee. And I took Will Ospreay, Adam Cole, Tommaso Ciampa, Lucha Bros, and Jon Moxley. Anything stick out to you on those top 5 on each side, Tom?
No, I mean, it's great. I like the direction that you're going. It's not as good as mine. So, I mean, thanks for trying. I'm just kidding. But no, you got some strong talents there. So I like how this is coming together.
Yeah. These are both companies that I would be very, very interested in purchasing their shows. So moving on to pick number 11 overall, round 6. Tom, what are you going to do to me there?
Yeah. So again, I want guys that are incredibly visible. That you might have picked that up a little bit in the first 5. Again, guys also too that maybe aren't on the national radar, but could be. This next pick I think gets me back there. Incredibly visible. He was actually just in a movie I watched on Netflix a couple days ago. The Happy Madison movie, the Wrong Missy. Yeah. Roman Reigns is my pick here. Number 11 overall, number 6 for my squad. I'm a big fan of Roman Reigns. I do think health-wise he's okay. I do think that again we're in a world after coronavirus, or there's wellness around it, or there's a vaccine for it or treatment for it, more so than there is now. So Reigns isn't susceptible as he maybe is today in the time we're doing this draft. And I think he's fantastic. So visible, competent in the ring. Also, I'll draw out that 11 picks in, and the entire Shield is gone. That's interesting to me.
That's a very good point there as well. Yeah, the Shield all gone in the first 11 picks, even when they're not together or even in the same company anymore. So, or at least 1/3 of them not there anymore. And you got 2/3 of them. So, I got the best of them, but you got the 2/3. So that's okay. All right. Well, my next pick, I'm going right back to the well of what I was just talking about, that idea of talking people into the matches and making the storyline good. Good heels make good baby faces then. And I mean that 2 ways. One, when you're a good heel, you will eventually you can become a good baby face because you're so good at being a heel. But also you need strong heels to make your baby faces worth watching. And maybe one of the best heels right now in the world, as far as I'm concerned. In ring, he's really good and coming along and only going to get better. But on the mic, I don't know if there's anybody better at making people hate him. Other than maybe somebody else we have talked about before. We'll talk later. The pick 12, I am taking MJF, Maxwell Jacob Friedman. He just has a way to make you want to see him get his rear end kicked. And he seems to know that, and he seems to just love it. I kind of laugh when people get really mad at what he tweets. His Twitter handle is MJF. So that's MJF, the character, tweeting. That's not, if his name really is Maxwell Friedman, I don't know his real name. Don't really care. That's not him as a real human being. Maybe it is. I don't know. I've never met the guy. Don't know him outside of wrestling. Don't know him inside wrestling. But I just think he's a great heel. And like I said, really strong in the ring. Had a great match Saturday night with Jungle Boy. I think he's only going to get better. I think he can be a cornerstone. So to get him 12 picks in, I'm really happy to get MJF in Fields Wrestling.
And it's interesting. I thought he was the guy that you were talking about with your last pick, and then when you didn't, I was already kind of thinking of Reigns. So I could have sniped this guy too, and I didn't. Gosh.
That is true. You could have had him, but you don't, and I do. So I'm happy about that.
You got some guys on the mic that are good. I'll tell you that for sure. So that's good. They're going to need it because my guys are good in the ring. Bringing me to my next pick. So Bobo Championship Wrestling, pick number 8 overall for me. Is that pick 15 overall in the entire draft? And 13. Gosh, clearly math is not my strong suit at the moment. So pick 7 for me, actually. Drew McIntyre. I love Drew McIntyre. He's a guy that, way back in the day, like when he first got his first break, and when you're called the chosen one, like you got a lot to live up to. But then he went away and he reestablished himself. I'm not sure work ethic wise in terms of like reinventing yourself. And many can hold a candle to him. So I want that type of passion and energy. And I hope, and I believe he'll bring that. And I also think he is someone who lots left in the tank. So happy to have Drew McIntyre. Easily someone who matches up well with Rollins or Okada or Reigns as my group's coming together.
You definitely have a very strong top of your card, no doubt about that. With bona fide experience being at the top of that card, some of my guys have a lot of potential to be at the top of the card. You've definitely got the experience, I think, factor on your side. I don't mind being the young upstart. That's okay. So we'll go with that. Now I say that, and my next pick, I'm not going young. I've used the word best in the world in a few different ways. I've called Will Ospreay the best in the world. I've said that maybe MJF's the best heel in the world. Maybe the Lucha Brothers are one of the best tag teams in the world. But there's only one person that when you say best in the world, at least for me, I know there are other people out there who've used it even more recently. But when you say best in the world, it takes me back to when I first got into Ring of Honor and when I first spent an awful lot of time watching Ring of Honor DVDs, going to shows in Chicago, traveling even to Detroit and Dayton and New York, and other places as well. And in New York, I happened to see this man lose the Ring of Honor world title. Did he lose it? I think it was him. Anyways, I've seen him in Ring of Honor a number of times. He's coming to Fields Wrestling Federation with the 14th pick, Daniel Bryan. Best in the world. People are getting their heads kicked in. Their effing heads kicked in fact. We'll keep it PG here. But Daniel Bryan, what can you say? I mean, again, somebody tell me the last bad Daniel Bryan match that he wasn't concussed in. Maybe some of the ones where he got injured were less than perfect, but let's not hold a match where some guy gets hurt against him. When Daniel Bryan's healthy and motivated, he's awesome. He seems to be very motivated right now in the Intercontinental title tournament, which I love. And he's actually really good on the mic. He's come so far on the mic since I actually got to see his NXT debut against Chris Jericho live. It was in Milwaukee. I was there for that first night of NXT when it was the reality competition, kind of stupid stuff. But I got to see Chris Jericho and Daniel Bryan go one-on-one, which is pretty cool. Yeah, Bryan's been a favorite of mine for a long time. So I am thrilled. Again, 14 picks into the draft for Daniel Bryan to still be there. I'm just thrilled that I don't want to say he fell to me, but I'm thrilled that he's there for me.
That's awesome. Good pick there. Well, my next pick, not a reactionary pick, but we've been talking a lot about guys being strong on the mic. And while I think I have guys that I've already taken that I think are really well established, I think this next pick really gives me a stronger foothold. Not only that, he's a guy that, like, in my lifetime, I can say this guy is the reason why I paid money to buy a ticket because he was on the card. And this guy, for me, is another reason why he's getting selected here. Kevin Owens is my next pick. And I'm thrilled. Again, I think he's got a lot left in the tank. And I think he's got versatility. And then to be good or bad, depending on which way I want to position him as a character. And then on the mic, I mean, the KO show, you name it, he's got it. He's got the gift of gab. So
he does. Somebody that we were lucky enough to interview, unfortunately, by text and by email, but not on the podcast when we were doing interviews back in the original iteration of Two Spot Monkeys. Went back and looked through that. A lot of those guys are signed now, let me tell you. Samurai Del Sol and Kevin Owens and some others as well. Yeah, kind of fun there. And just a super nice guy from everything you've ever heard, too. The kind of guy you definitely want in the locker room from the sounds of it. So nice pick with Owens. Very nice pick. So with pick 16, the 8th round coming to a close, it's time to grab the cornerstone of my women's division. It's been 15 picks. We haven't had a woman go in the draft yet. That all changes right now. I'm going to get the cornerstone of my women's division. Some people probably are thinking they know what way I'm going to go, or maybe I'm going to go one of two ways, and I think I'm going to zag when you think I'm going to zig. The cornerstone of my women's division, pick number 16, is going to be Rhea Ripley, the Nightmare. I think Ripley has all the makings of a star. I thought that back in her first Mae Young Classic, when she was less descript of a character at that point. I think she's come a long way in kind of coming into her own in that realm. She had a nice match going on with Io Shirai last week. They've got a 3-way now booked for In Your House with Charlotte and Io. I just think Ripley has all of the qualities. She's believable on the mic. She's great in the ring. Ripley is somebody I am absolutely thrilled to have as the cornerstone of the FWF women's division, because I do want a women's division that is serious and deals with wrestling and good characters. We're not going to have the Divas division in FWF. We're going to have women who know what they're doing, and Ripley is my top pick for that.
All right. Next up on my list, do I answer you by drafting my first woman, or do I stay with my best available? It's a question I need to wrestle with, but I'm gonna trust my gut. I'm gonna trust that other people that I may want will be there when I want them. So I'm gonna go with Matt Riddle next. As my next pick 17, pick number 9 overall for me. Matt Riddle, he's goofy and quirky, but he's pretty awesome in the ring. So, and he's incredibly young, all things considered. I think he is. I think his potential is a little bit untapped, and maybe he's partly to blame for that. So my goal would be that I can fully tap that in BCW.
I think that's a great pick. I actually thought maybe I could get him a little later. So great job snagging him early. Nothing wrong with the guy in the ring. I agree with you. Maybe some behind the scenes stuff. Some of that's just maturity. He's a young guy, and I think he's young for his age, even if that makes sense of what I'm trying to say. But I mean, nothing wrong with him when he gets between the ropes. That's for sure. So very nice pickup for you there. And he can talk. He's engaging. So pick 18 for me. This will be also my 9th pick. I think it's time to stack my tag division a little bit. I joked about, half joked about maybe I was going to take, 5 tag teams to begin with. I certainly didn't do that. I'm not going to take 5 tag teams, but I am going to take my second tag team to make sure that I've got 2 of the absolute best tag teams in the world to anchor my division, not only with the Lucha Brothers, who I took in the first 5 picks, but I am going to welcome Red Dragon of Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly in as my second tag team. Now, I do have Adam Cole earlier from my second pick as well. But I have to tell you that if I'm thinking creatively, well, I'll probably acknowledge the Undisputed Era, have them fist bump in the back or something. I'm probably going to keep them apart because I don't, if I'm just thinking how I would book this creatively in a brand new company, I probably don't want to look too much like WWE. So, or AEW or Impact or anybody else, and feel like I'm just doing the same thing they were already doing. I'm going to want to have my own stamp on things. So while I may acknowledge that, maybe it will come into play if they need a 6-man partner down the road or something like that. They're going to come in as Red Dragon. Whether I'll do the stylized spelling as I've got on the banner there, that was all about Davey Richards when they first formed. So I don't know if I'll do that or not. But they're going to be Red Dragon. And as long as I can get away with that from whatever movie house owns the trademark on that from the Hannibal Lecter movies. But Red Dragon is my next pick. Red Dragon versus the Lucha Brothers. Sign me up.
Sign me up too. I'll tune in. I got a promotion to run, but I'll still tune in.
we'll run separate nights. We'll be all right.
That's true. Awesome. All right. Well, so pick number 10. Again, I could go with a tag team too, but not my next best available. I'm gonna go here and grab Kenny Omega. Kenny Omega to me in the 10th slot. I really feel like the value fell. I think he's been given the gift of an extended career by going to AEW. I think that the workload he was in when he was in Japan was incredibly heavy and maybe taxing and wearing. That's obviously been reduced, I think, in AEW in terms of the frequency and maybe the impact of matches. Still, though, like depending on the day, top 5 in the world, top 3 in the world, easily top 10. So we're 19 picks in, and I get a top. I already have the best wrestler in the world, Okada, and now I've got Omega. So okay, I'll take it.
You probably are the second best wrestler in the world. I got Ospreay, so. But I mean, right there, if depending on how you want to look creatively at things, you could certainly go back to Okada Omega somewhere down the road. Or even as a kickoff on your debut show, you do Okada Omega. That'd be pretty cool too. Omega being there at 19, maybe shame on me for not snagging him earlier. Because he's certainly worthy of a better pick than 19, I think. Although that's true of a lot of people. I think as people are watching along, you're probably wondering why certain people are dropping, and it's not because they're not talented. This seems a bit interesting of a pick, although not really connected to your Omega pick at all. But somebody I've had my eye on as well, and again, somebody who I'm really happy to see fall all the way to 20, only so that I can snag them and get them on my roster to round out our top 20 picks and my 10th pick. So, certainly important. What would that be? Probably my 7th single males competitor when I've got Rhea Ripley and then the 2 tag teams as well. I am going to bring in the other half of the tag team. Kota Ibushi is going to come to Fields Wrestling Federation, family wrestling. It's just going to be Chikara. But Kota Ibushi, I love Ibushi. Ibushi is great in the ring. Certainly not a talker, but you know what? Again, one of those guys who it doesn't matter if he can't talk. He can do it in the ring. Maybe I'll pair him with a manager somewhere down the road, although it's a little hard with a baby face. And I don't think Ibushi is a really good heel with his offense. I think Ibushi can be a top level baby face though. You look at, I could do things like Ibushi versus Daniel Bryan. I could do Ibushi versus MJF. And who knows who else I'll get in this draft that I can match up with Kota Ibushi. So Kota Ibushi, really, really happy to grab him at 20. Again here, we will go over, see the top, or not top, we'll just do round 6 through 10. I don't want to fill up screens too badly. But round 6 through 10, Tom goes Roman Reigns, Drew McIntyre, Kevin Owens, Matt Riddle, Kenny Omega. Almost a total WWE 5 rounds there for you, Tom. WWE connected anyways with Matt Riddle. And I say that, and 3 out of my 5 picks are WWE connected too. So Daniel Bryan, MJF, Daniel Bryan, Ripley, Red Dragon, and Kota Ibushi. You definitely have, again, that bona fide top of the card power on your side with Reigns, McIntyre, and Owens all adding into that again. Kenny Omega can go there too, and I don't think Matt Riddle's far off. So thoughts on those 5 rounds, Tom?
Yeah, no, it's exciting to look at those guys on the screen, and I'm a little. I don't want to admit this, but I will because you're my friend. I'm a little envious of some of your talent. So here's hoping that in the next 5 picks to close out this episode, I can swing the momentum back my way.
You won't, because I'm getting them. But it's okay. All right. So after Ibushi, pick number 21 to start off. What is that? Round 11, I guess it is.
Yeah, round 11, pick 21. I feel like I can't wait any longer, and it makes perfect sense on my list. So I'm gonna grab what will be the cornerstone for my women's division, someone I am super high on, and that being Shayna Baszler. I think Shayna has a tremendous future ahead of her. I've loved almost everything she's done so far. I love the way that she's been built. I will continue that trend. I'll probably make her even more unstoppable. But she's also someone who can give her opponent a credible match in the ring and give them a great opportunity to shine, even though in the end she comes out on top. So doesn't mean she's going to be the first champion or what have you of my women's division, but nonetheless, Shayna is where I start.
Nothing wrong with that pick. I mean, if I was going to look to stack my women's division, kind of like the tag teams where I wanted to grab the second one right away, Shayna would have been super high as a possibility there for that second woman slot as well for me. That being said, I'm not going there just yet, realizing I might have to soon, depending on what you're going to do. But at pick 22 for me in the 11th round, if you would have told me 2, 3, or 4 years ago that this guy could be one of the top baby faces out there, I would tell you were probably nuts. He also has a business acumen that seems to be working for him. I know there have also been stories of maybe he's a jerk sometimes. I think people can be. But I like people who bet on themselves. And much like you were talking about with the Young Bucks, they bet on themselves time and time again over their career. And it's worked out, it seems like, every single time almost for them. So I'm going to take somebody who's bet on himself and won big time with number 22, and that's Cody. Cody also has found a way to put on kind of this epic big match feel for his matches on pay-per-views. He tried to do it with Archer on Saturday night. It doesn't work as well without the big crowd. But that's just part of what we're in right now. In our new world, we're going to have big crowds again after the coronavirus. So Cody is somebody who I think can help us not only in the front office aspect, but also being a babyface who we can have all of those different heels I've mentioned. Maybe MJF and Cody go at it again. Maybe Tommaso Ciampa and Cody have a thing. I'm excited about the different things I could do with somebody like Cody, and also think from the front office end he could be helpful as well. So I'm happy to get Cody in round 11.
It's a strong pick for sure. Well, pick 23 and round 12. My next selection is going to be Aleister Black. Again, high quality in ring, in my opinion. Guy that was someone I slowly got to be familiar with when he was Tommy End. And he kind of maybe 15, 16-ish started to hit his rise in the U.S. I know he was bigger in Europe before he made it here. But I really enjoyed him and think he has tremendous upside. Also like his ability to talk. And I think you could easily have him go two different directions. And I think there's a lot of matches that I'd love to see him have with guys on my roster. Okada. I would love to see him against Omega. And I'd love to see him against Riddle. And he's had matches with guys that are on my roster in WWE. But again, we might go a different direction or we might align them. So Aleister Black falls to me here, and I'm grateful.
Nothing wrong with that pick at all. I like Aleister Black a lot. You definitely, I don't know if you sniped him right there from me, but he's been on my radar here for the last number of picks. So I probably should have pulled the trigger yet again. I'm learning. I can't wait too long because you know what you got. So you're able to snipe those guys. But much along maybe that same line, so maybe it's okay. Maybe it's good if I don't have two guys in the same dark vein, I guess, for lack of a better word. But for my 12th pick, a guy who I think can be at the main event level of any company he's in, including my own. So to get him 12 picks into this draft, I'm pretty happy as well. Is Finn Balor. Finn Balor, I think, has been rejuvenated, and we've seen almost a Prince Devitt type role from him lately in NXT, and that's, to me, where he should have been. The smiling, almost dorky baby face that they were doing with him for a while, just the guy's money in the ring. Let him kill people in the ring. That is what he is good at. I think it's really, really lucky probably for me that he landed here 24 picks into the draft because I think that Balor is a top level guy, no matter who you go with. And again, Finn Balor versus Will Ospreay, Finn Balor versus Kota Ibushi. Yeah, I'd pay to see those matches. And I know you would too, Tom. So I'll let you know when the pay-per-view is, and you go ahead and get it on order. Well, we won't go through BR Live. We'll make sure we have other things that work better.
Awesome. Well, my next pick, it's kind of a sentimental pick for me, and it may surprise you. I kind of hope it does surprise you, and I don't know where this person might be on your list at all. This is pick number 13 for me overall, and 13 is my favorite number. It's not my lucky number, but it's my favorite number. So to get him here, I see the role that he will play, not just being in the ring, where I think there's so much left in the tank, but I think then in the years to come, being just a great mind. I mean, he goes by Wrestling Genius. So Chris Hero is my pick here. Number 13 for me overall, number 25 in this draft. I love Chris Hero. It's funny. It took me a long time to come around on him, but when I came around on him, I fell hard. Super big man crush. So to have him on my roster and to have him, anyone I've drafted aside from Shayna, because I do want to keep kind of men and women separate, Hero would match up fantastically with any of them. Has already in some cases, but for the most part, there'd be a lot of fresh matches there, and I'd love to see them all.
Two really quick Hero stories, just because they're my favorite Hero memories. One involves you, actually. We were in Atlanta for WrestleMania. I believe it was Atlanta. And we were at the Ring of Honor fan conclave thing before one of the shows that night. And you and I were standing in front of the Kings of Wrestling booth. And I don't remember now who you had a T-shirt on, but you probably remember this.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, you had a T-shirt of somebody's of Cesaro or Castagnoli or Hero's favorite band. I think it was, wasn't it?
I think it was just like a clothing company. Like it was maybe like a hip hop clothing company or something in that vein.
And so they asked to get their picture taken with Tom. Tom didn't have to pay for a picture with the Kings of Wrestling at all. They asked to have their picture taken with Tom. So that was pretty cool. I thought as well.
I wish I had that picture because I don't.
Oh man,
but
sucks.
I don't know where it is. It's out there somewhere.
And then the other one is our dear friend, the late great Paul Kurtzman, RDT. I sat with Paul at one of those Atlanta shows, and the Kings, I think, if I remember right, night one, they lost the titles to World's Greatest Tag Team, and then night two, they came out, and I want to say wrestled Future Shock, and they were just pissed at the world and all of that. Paul hated Chris Hero, and not in a wrestling sense. He just thought Chris Hero was terrible. So the whole time during their matches, both nights, I was sitting with Paul, and the whole time, just very calmly in Paul's way, he would go, "Jim, you know who sucks?" I go, "Who sucks, Paul?" And you go, "Chris Hero." And that was just throughout the whole night. He was ragging on Hero. So I miss Paul a lot, and that's one of the memories that makes me laugh when I think of Paul. Because I never thought Chris Hero sucked. I was slow to come around on him just because I wasn't as keenly aware of him and hadn't seen a lot of his stuff. I knew his name, but hadn't seen a lot of his stuff really until he came into Ring of Honor the first time in the CZW angle. So that was kind of when I first became aware of him. So big fan of Hero. I got to admit, I really hadn't thought about him much. Nice snag for you on Chris Hero. Pick number 26 is one of my favorite guys going today. It's who I'm going to take here in the 13th round. Again, I started thinking about the matches I could put together with the other guys who I've already drafted in this. And for me, one of the top stars in Ring of Honor, one of the top people who should be Ring of Honor World Champion are in that mix in the near future whenever Ring of Honor is able to come back into doing shows. I don't know that they're going to do this with him, but I think they should. And that is with my 13th pick, Bandito is going to be that pick. I have loved almost everything I've seen from Bandito. I think he's been really, really strong. I know he got hurt there for a while. He is 1/3 of the 6-man tag champs right now in Ring of Honor. Who will probably have the longest reign because they just have all this time without shows. But kudos to them for hanging on to him through all this. But Bandito, I am super stoked to get Bandito. He was high on my list. I didn't want to reach too early for him, but I started to feel like if I didn't grab Bandito here, you might snipe him from me. And so now you got me playing defense, Tom. And I'm looking at making sure that I get those guys I want, guys, gals, and tag teams that I want. And Bandito has been high on my list since the very beginning of this draft. So before this first night ends of this draft, I wanted to make sure Bandito was on the Fields Wrestling Federation roster.
Very good pick there. Kudos to you for that snag. My next pick, I'm going to bolster the women's division. I'm going to select Charlotte Flair in round 14. Pick 27 overall, my 14th pick. If you're looking at Shayna Baszler and Charlotte Flair and you're used to what you've seen on TV, you might go, oh gosh, two kind of predominantly strong heel characters, and maybe I'm setting myself up to have a weighted heel division. Maybe not. We'll see. Talent is talent, and Charlotte's amazing in the ring and amazing on the mic. So really fortunate, I think, to get her here. It makes a lot of sense before we close out night one to go with Charlotte Flair right here.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. I think many people would see Charlotte Flair maybe as the cornerstone of the division. We've both gone other ways for our cornerstone, but that doesn't mean that Flair can't be a cornerstone still for you. Strong pick there. Baszler and Flair to start off your women's division. Nothing wrong with doing that. I am also going to bolster my women's division here in the 14th round. Not reactionary, just something I was looking at. Somebody that I have had my eye on as my number 2. So I'm really happy to be able to get the first 2 women on my board, even with you taking 2 people who certainly were high on my board, but they weren't 1 and 2. Ripley was number 1, and I am thrilled to bring Asuka in as my number 2. I have been a fan of Asuka since she came into NXT. I think she's been great. I think they've criminally underutilized her. She is excellent in the ring. She has shown a ton of personality, as we've talked about numerous times on this show. In the empty arena times, and I hope that they run with that even when they start getting crowds back, whether it's small crowds, like apparently is happening tonight. We'll see. And even when they get back to larger crowds in arenas, I hope they really realize what they have with Asuka here. So Asuka, one of the cornerstones of my women's division, her and Rhea Ripley. I can already see that as, potentially maybe that's my first women's title match. However we get there, a tournament or a battle royal or something. We wouldn't do a battle royal to crown a champion. That's stupid. But maybe to get the top 2 contenders. Asuka is going to be my second pick there in the women's division and my 14th pick overall. We each have 1 pick left in this episode before we round out the first half of this fantasy draft. Tom, what are you doing with your last pick on this show?
Yeah, this is an easy pick for me, and I'm really excited that this individual is still there. My 15th overall pick, and in round 15, I'm going to select Ricochet. I'm selecting him as a singles, as opposed to his current role in WWE, and I'm not going to name his tag partner only for the sake of that could be someone on a list of yours or mine for the future. So out of respect for not naming an unnamed or undrafted wrestler, I'm going to just say I want Ricochet as a singles. I think that unfortunately since last fall in the real time of this, he's not being given the platform that he deserves to be successful. And I envision him as someone who's incredibly talented and incredibly marketable. And I can't wait to have him on my roster and with the spotlight that he deserves.
That's how do you see him in your junior division or your heavyweight division? I'm just curious.
Yeah, probably both. Again, I don't know yet if I'm really leaning. I mean, I look back at the 15 picks I've made so far. I think you'd easily say Dragon Lee and Ricochet on paper makes a world of sense. But I also think that to put Ricochet into that box, or anyone into that box for that matter, again, I definitely will say this. Unlike getting Osprey and having that be for me what was going to be a really solid junior division, because I had him in that box, good, bad, or otherwise. I don't know that I'm willing to put guys I've already got on my roster in that box yet. We'll see.
Interesting. Yeah, and there's nothing, I think it's a mistake, honestly, when companies pigeonhole somebody as only a cruiserweight, too. So I think you're smart to think that way. All right, well, rounding out round number 15 / the first half of this draft, I am going to go ahead and bolster my tag division one more time. So in the first 15 picks, I'm getting 3 of the top tag teams in the world. You've certainly got a good start on your side as well. But I am going to take FTR, the former Revival of Cash Wheeler and Dax Harwood. We may work on the names a little bit because I'm not sure. I love Cash Wheeler's kind of good. Dax Harwood, I don't know. Seems like it could be in a type of movie that wouldn't be family friendly. We'll just leave it at that. But,
Family Wrestling Federation.
Family Wrestling Federation. Don't know about Dax Harwood. But I think the Revival are great in the ring. Maybe I could even bring in Arn Anderson for that. Anderson said he would love to manage the Revival at some point, or whatever. FTR seems to be what they're going by now. There was a big to-do about them and the Revolt and the fact that Caleb Conley and Zane somebody, I'm drawing a blank right now, used that on the indie scene apparently out in the Carolinas. So, and the Revolt know them, or these guys know them. So FTR appears to be the name they're going by. We'll see when they show up again somewhere, whether that be we mentioned we neglected to talk about them potentially showing up at Double or Nothing. They didn't, so that's good. Maybe we didn't need to talk about it since it didn't happen. But I'm really glad FTR, the Red Dragon, and the Lucha Brothers. I'm building a tag team division that I'm super happy with here, and we'll see where that goes. So that is round 15 off the board. Let's just look at those last 4 or 5 rounds. I'm sorry again. Tom, you got Shayna Baszler, Aleister Black, Chris Hero, and Charlotte Flair and Ricochet. So you definitely bolstered your women's division there with your top 2 women. And I got Cody, Finn Balor, Bandito, Asuka, and FTR. I really like my 5 there, Tom. I got to be honest.
Yeah, I was looking when you put those names up and seeing them on the screen there on my end. I was like, wow, those were some really good picks. I mean, I liked what I did before I got there, but like it just speaks to the depth of what we're able to do. So it's exciting, and it really sets us up for the next 15 picks on each of our sides, which will be coming in the next episode.
That's right. So with that, we're going to wrap this episode, and then this will hopefully be up yet. Maybe you'll see it on Tuesday morning. My hope is that it's going to go up late here on Monday night. And then we'll probably get that other episode out to you guys probably late in the week, I'm thinking. Does that sound good to you, Tom?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, late in the week we'll get part 2 of this, so be sure to look for that. Part 2 will be coming up with around 16 through 30. So far, though, I got the better company. I'm sure of it. Tom, it's been fun as always. Anything you want to add before we head off?
Nope. I look forward to seeing you back when we resume this draft so I can really make you eat those words.
All right. Sounds good. Hey, everybody, stay safe. Stay home if you can. Just stay healthy. That's the important thing. We will talk to you soon. Thanks again for watching Two Spot Monkeys.